Welcome to the Beltway Broadcast, the premier podcast for the workplace learning and talent development professionals of the Association for Talent Development's Metro DC chapter. We've got some great resources in store for you today.
Hello, fellow ATDers. I'm Stephanie Hubka, and I am the 2023 Vice President of Membership Outreach, as well as a member of the Pod Squad here at the Metro DC chapter of ATD.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Eanes, the 2023 Vice President of Marketing and Communications.
We also have Halyna Hodges, our Vice President of Finance and Operations, as our producer. And for today's episode, we are so excited to be welcoming Sardek Love. Welcome, Sardek.
Well, hey, everybody at Metro ATD, DCAT. You know what? I'm a former chapter president. I don't even know the name of the chapter. You know what I'm saying.
It's okay.
Hey, how y'all doing?
It's okay.
It's you got 3 years.
You got the region right. We know what you mean. And we do have an audience from all over the world at this point. So it's a big welcome to everybody. We're so excited you're here. And we're talking about something fantastic this week. We're talking about one of those topics I absolutely love. But before we dive in, it would be wonderful if you would introduce yourself to all of our viewers and listeners today.
Well, for those of you who are lucky enough to not have met me yet, are you in for a treat? I am absolutely crazy about training. And so my name is Sardek Love. I'm, as you probably have heard already, former chapter president of this chapter, former national advisor for chapters with National ATD, and currently the extraordinarily cool guy for Sardek Love International, the CEO of that. And I'm based here in Manassas, Virginia. And, one of the things about me, what I'm known for in the world of ATD and training in general is facilitation and what we're going to talk about today, the science of engagement. I've worked in 32 countries. I got fired by Booz Allen Hamilton, which led me to being here where I am at now, 17 years later. And by the way, for those of you who are familiar with Booz Allen Hamilton, and we have members who are boozers. Oh, yeah. I probably shouldn't say boozers, but you know what I mean. I love Booz Allen Hamilton. It was not a bad thing at all. My boss and I, we didn't see eye to eye. He did me a favor, and he helped me find success elsewhere. And I like to say he fired me to success. And in fact, it was such a great relationship with us, aside from my boss, that relationship, that I've worked and came back as a consultant for Booz Allen Hamilton. So yes, in fact, you can get fired and be brought back at a higher rate. I'm just saying.
Gosh, that would be an episode in itself, would it not? I mean, that's a great part of the story. I don't think I knew that about you, but what a way to spin things around.
Oh, yeah. I got spun around and brought it back and walked back in and had a higher rate. It was great.
That's what it's really all about. And the spinning is just part of the fun, right?
Oh, yeah. And Booz Allen's so awesome, though.
Oh, they are. They are.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, it is very clear that you were exactly the person that we should have here to talk about the science of participant engagement. That is far and away one of the things I think you were certainly known for, and you do better than just about anybody out there. So a lot of times when you talk about engagement, the word that you hear is art. It's kind of the art of engagement. We're here to talk about the science of engagement. Tell me a little bit about what that means to you. How did that come to you? How did that term really become part of what you do?
Well, what's interesting, Stephanie, is I started back, and when I got fired and I started on my own, I literally launched my business 15 minutes after I got fired. Because I
waste no time, right?
Yeah. Well, I had it in my head that's what I wanted to do, and I figured, since I got fired and I was driving out to Dulles, out into Herndon, because that's where I lived at the time from Tyson's. I was like, you know what? Now there's no better time to figure out what I want to do and just launch this thing and see what happens. Yeah. And I called a buddy of mine and said, hey, I just got fired, didn't anticipate that. And I was actually looking for a male bonding kind of thing. He's like, dude, today's your lucky day. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Long story short, he hired me on the spot. He gave me an option, full-time, part-time contractor, you name it, whatever. And because he knew me, guess what? Through ATD, through the National Advisor Chapters. He knew me really well. And so Rick Hicks, he hates it when I tell the story because he's kind of a humble guy, quiet and that sort of thing. Sure. But he opened the door and I started working for his organization. And that's where, now I was a trainer at the time. Yep. And, so I would go out and do that whole talk until the participants want to throw up. And I didn't know how bad I was, right? And so I would put people to sleep, and I always thought it was because they were on drugs. Maybe they took something at night to help them sleep or something. I didn't know it was
Handed
me.
out on the way in, right?
Yeah. And so it was actually through their organization where they taught me how to transform into a facilitator. So Michael LeBlanc and Diane Dick at the formerly known as Randy Smith Training Solutions, they coached me around the world. And then I started, and I'm a researcher, right? So as a performance consultant at heart, I started looking at the science behind things, and we'll talk about how I came up with this stuff. But the reality is I started looking at why did some of the things that they taught me work, and then I went crazy with it and put my twist to it with the science backing behind it. And here we are 16, almost 17 years later, 32 countries later, 2 books later. Thank you, Vince, for firing me. Brother, thank you so much.
I love the gratitude.
Oh,
Love it.
so what do we need to know about the science?
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's keep it simple
Let's do
because the way I've got it, my latest keynote, and for those of you who may have seen me at the ATD Core 4 here in DC back here a couple of months ago or so, that's where I did it there. And I'm doing it in multiple chapters and other organizations as well. So when we look at the science of engagement, let's start with the basics. Now, I'm going to give you a framework. So for those of you who are listening, great. If you're watching, you get to see our beautiful faces. But let me tell you the science around my framework. So I have what's called the engagement loop. And engagement requires 3 things. And you do these things repetitively. So they're a loop. And the 3 things are you have to grab people's attention. You have to repeatedly give them a chance to connect. So there's connection. And you have to give them repeated chances to interact. So there's interaction. So the 3 parts are attention, connection, and interaction. Now, why is it so simple? Well, because most trainers, as I've started researching them many years ago, were like my former self. We just start talking. We get up.
Of course.
And let me guess. Let me ask the 2 of you. And for those of you who are listening or watching this, let me ask you to answer the question as well. So Chris and Stephanie, have you ever in your careers as a training professional, have you ever delivered training that even you would have slept through?
Oh, yeah.
When I first started out.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's the question that I get. It's a laugh, right? But the fact of the matter is we're like, oh yeah, probably last week, right? For some of us, right? Yesterday, today, whatever. So the point is people fall asleep. There's a lot of data behind this. In fact, you may not be aware, but there's a study that was done and some research that was released in August of 2022 around boredom. And they found that in a meeting, of which training, we're a form of a meeting, right?
Sure.
Okay, whether virtual or in person. So they found that 52% of people will stop paying attention after 30 minutes in a meeting.
Yeah.
That's pretty long.
And then they found that 96% of people stop paying attention at the 50-minute mark.
That's longer than I'd expect.
I know.
But I believe every word
Right?
of that. I do.
Right. And for some of us, we killed that attention just
6
like
minutes.
that, right?
6 minutes.
Yeah, in 6 minutes. We probably could come up with some world records. Some of you who are listening or watching probably would say, I can do it in 30 seconds. And you know what? I will believe
Before
you.
the meeting starts. No, I'm kidding.
Right. Before the meeting starts, we're going to put the you in suck, right?
True.
So this is where I was really trying to understand, why is it that people do this stuff? Why do we feel like we have to talk instead of doing the one thing that grabs everybody's attention, and that is grab their attention.
Yeah.
Right? Now, why do you want to do that? And why do you want to repeatedly do that? So the attention part, let's talk about it. Have you ever heard of this thing called dopamine?
Sure have.
What?
Most of us have in this space, right? Dopamine. It's that feel good thing. When we feel good, we laugh, we release dopamine. And what that does is it actually increases our ability to learn. It increases our attention span. It motivates us, increases our motivation. Now, people may not necessarily know that. So grabbing people's attention, here's where you've got to do it, but not for the wrong reasons. You see, a lot of us talk. And so we start talking and people will grant us their attention for like whatever, 10 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever.
Yeah.
And if you're not novel, if you don't say something that's interesting, unique, or funny, they check out.
Yeah.
And so if you think about what we've been doing just in this little bit of time that we've been interacting, look what I've done. I've been hijacking everybody's attention with a little bit of humor, saying some kind of unexpected things. That's what I do. And that's called novelty.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the science behind this for a second, right? And then if you all interject me, because I'm like, once I get on a roll, it's like a
let's
roller
do it.
coaster.
We love it.
We love this.
Yeah, And look, I'm sitting here telling you to interrupt me, and I'm sitting here going blah 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 blah, which is what you should not be doing, right? When you're training. But let's have some fun with this.
Let's do it.
So dopamine. The funny thing about dopamine is if you want to get it to be released and repeatedly be released, think about social media. What does social media do that causes us to sit there and watch Instagram or TikTok repeatedly? I mean, how many of you, are the two of you, are you, either of you like addicted to some social media?
Yeah.
Not as much, although I will say I tend to look for the things that are going to bring me up.
Yeah.
The doom scrolling thing, not so much, but bringing myself up through funny Instagram things every day. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Because that's the point, right?
Yes.
Instagram and all these social media platforms, but particularly TikTok and Instagram, they're really good at figuring out what you like to give you that dose of dopamine. Right. And so my Instagram, let me tell you, I'm almost like afraid to show people my Instagram feed, not for inappropriate reasons, because the stuff that shows up in my Instagram feed is absolutely, I can't make this up, crazy funny.
I love it.
And so it knows that I get all these wild videos and I start watching this stuff. So I'm sitting there looking at this stuff and that feeds my brain.
Yeah.
Now we can take some lessons from social media and think about your content. See, most people deliver content where it's just information.
Yeah.
It doesn't solve a problem. And it's just kind of like, whatever. And here's the thing. If you're not solving a person's problem when you're training, you're becoming somebody's problem.
Yeah.
Because you're giving them information that's useless.
So true.
Right? And so you got to say it in a novel way. Don't just say it like the normal way. You got to say it what comedians do. Do a kind of a reversal. Take them one direction and then do something completely weird. For example, let me give you one. So have you ever been to a Starbucks and seen somebody who was sitting in the Starbucks having their coffee or their drink of choice and not on the Wi-Fi? Sitting there just looking like a psychopath.
It's rare, but I've seen it.
Okay, see, you weren't expecting the part about the psychopath, right? So that's what I'm talking about. And now I grabbed your attention, everyone's attention. Like, yeah, I've seen it. Like you just said, Stephanie, I've seen it. It's rare. Well, that's the point. It's rare. Say something that they may not necessarily have heard or put together quite that way.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now they're going to pay attention. Because here's an interesting science around when the dopamine gets released, what it does is it gives us that good feeling, but it also heightens our attention. And especially if you use appropriate humor, here's the funny thing about this. Right at the end of the joke, or whatever you do to get the humor, whether it's a meme, a video, whatever, right at the end of that, they're waiting for the next one. It's anticipation. Yeah. And so now they're waiting for you to do it again. And so now you've got a chance to interact with them, but you don't have to keep feeding them because you don't want to overwhelm them with dopamine, right? You don't want to get them addicted to that in training. Just saying. Okay. So keep doing things in a novel way because it grabs their attention. And if you're not sure how to do this, here's a really cool thing. Shameless book plug for a second, right? Where can you find ways to do this? Well, in my latest book, Presentation Essentials, chapter 6 actually has 13 different ways to grab attention. So I call it the 13 attention grabbing ways or openers, attention grabbing openers. So we all know them, but you probably haven't seen a list, and the two of you could probably put together a list. Many of us listeners could put together a list. Here's the thing. Do them. Repeat it. Different variation. Okay, let me stop. Give you a chance to interact about all of that. First part, the attention, the science behind it, dopamine. We want to be dealers in dopamine.
Oh, I love it.
I think it's such an important thing to consider. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I had an experience just a couple of days ago that went into that land of the dopamine in a way. It was looking for opportunities to bring about that sense of feeling good in a group. And I have to say, I this is like a testimonial for everything you've just talked about. It works. Yeah. As soon as they start feeling good, they want to continue that. And what that does is it really helps with engagement, which is something I'd actually love to hear you talk a little bit, the other side to that. How does this connect in with some of our learners or participants who might otherwise be disengaged or want to be disengaged? What have you experienced as far as some of those tricks or techniques that can help with some of our, we'll call them our more challenged participants?
Yeah. So people show up, and part of the problem why they show up, and I call it the 3Ds, they show up disinterested, distracted, and completely disconnected.
There you
right?
go.
So some of them will show up in those 3D formats automatically.
Yeah.
And the majority of that is because their prior experience with training has been one where they're just there. They don't want to be there. They feel like they got other value. Their managers didn't support them, blah, 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 blah. So we give them a host of reasons why they don't want to be there. Our job is to be so compelling that they want to be there. So how do you do that? So that's part of the other parts of the engagement loop. First thing you gotta do is give them a compelling reason to stop and listen and pay attention.
Right.
So that's the attention part. Say something novel. Okay. Now let's go to the next piece. Here's where engagement starts, and it's in the connection. So part 2 of that loop is attention, then go to connection. The thing about connection, and I have a law around this one. Actually, I have a law around attention too, but I'll come back to that. So the law around connection is the law of common ground. And the law of common ground says we grow together where we go together. Now, let me say that again. We grow together where we go together. We are pack animals. Here's the science. We are pack animals. We want to connect. And the first thing you need to do as a trainer as quickly as possible is give people a chance to connect. Here's the problem. Most of the time, we don't. We sit there and overuse lecture. So we start talking. We don't give them a compelling reason to listen. And then we talk and talk and talk.
Yeah.
So now your question, what are some techniques that we can do to deal with this?
Yeah.
Okay. If you just think about this, and in my programs, whether it's Master Virtual Presenter for teaching this virtually for virtual trainers or Master Facilitator for in person, it's all the same. You know them. Many of you know these, but the problem is you don't do them. And there's actually one reason why you don't do them. Here's a few. Okay. Obviously, we can put them into group activities, small group, large group, paired activities, triad activities, quad activities. I mean, we can do gamification. We could do a number of things. In fact, I have a list of 34. If you were right now, well, I know this is going to be recorded. So if you go out and look at askamasterfacilitator.com and you go to that website, what you'll see if you do it right now before it disappears, which some of you will see this, but I'll give you all a special link where you can find it after it goes away because they only stay up for a week. I have a document where I give away a total of 30 different learning methods, 15 of which are active learning methods and 15 are the passive. You want to use the active learning methods as much as you can. So out of that 15, and I have a total of about 40 that I use. So I'm giving away 15 for my second favorite F word, free. Yep. Okay. And my first favorite F word is first class. That's what you're going to be when you get this. Yeah, mic drop, dog. All right, see how this works? See the hijack? See the hijack? Okay. So we have to use those active learning methods and then use them repeatedly. Now, let me say one more thing, and I'm going to give you a chance, both of you, to react to this, because here's the problem that most trainers have. The reason they don't do it is their courses aren't designed this way.
Yeah.
Right.
And I always say that participant engagement begins first by design, then by delivery.
Yes.
You've got to be using engaging methods so that you can be engaging, because no matter how great you, I, or Chris may be as a facilitator, if we got a poorly designed course, it's going to beat us every time.
Yeah.
So let me stop there and say again, engagement begins first by design, then by delivery.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I got to say too, that was actually an area where I was thinking of asking you about that, but I think you've already kind of brought us into that space. It's that idea about how you prepare, because so much of what you've shared, not only does it make sense, it feels like a best practice. This is what you should be doing. But if you've never done it before, it's hard. And there are aspects of this that may feel almost uncomfortable, perhaps, if what you're used to is that front of the room delivery where you present things, whether it's scripted, practically memorized, it's just that comfort zone. How do you get out of that comfort zone and start challenging yourself? Is it practice? Is it, is it that part of that design process? What are some of those tips that you have as far as how you can just get good at this?
This is a great, insightful question. So it's an ego trip. This is an ego trip. Most of us don't know how to do, and I wrote this as a quote for trainers. It actually works for trainers, for leaders, and great communicators and influencers. It's all the same. You can just replace the word trainer with leader, facilitator, communicator, whatever. Yep. But the quote is this: great facilitators trade control for contribution. Now, that's deep. Wonderful. Think about that. Great facilitators trade control for contribution. You got to give up control so that they contribute. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants a solution to their problem, but they want to have a voice. And when we suppress the voice by talking, here's the thing: learning, you cannot learn and talk and listen all at the same time. It just doesn't work. So one of the challenges is we as facilitators, trainers, whatever you want to call yourself, we've got to get off this mantle of thinking that we've got to be the know-it-all, the sage on the stage, and we've got to let go. So I call this, and the easiest method to do this, all right, y'all write this down. This is drum roll, please. Okay, drum roll, please. This is the hardest thing for a training professional to do, and it is to become a curious ask. Now, you're like, what did he just say? Because if I didn't say it correctly, you might have heard it somewhat differently. You might have heard something completely different from what I said. So let me be clear. Curious ask, curious ask. And in my programs, I teach that habit. I'm going to give this habit to everyone, because here's a cool thing about this. I'm going to give it to you for my second favorite F word. Here's a cool thing about it, because you still ain't going to do it. It's hard as heck. I'm going to tell you what it is. Y'all want to know what it is?
Yeah. Sure.
Ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you're like, well, that's underwhelming. Tell us something we don't know, Mr. Obvious. Okay. But here's the science behind this.
Yeah.
It's actually asking questions that begin with two words. What do you think those two words are? If you had to guess?
What and how?
Yes. You're a curious ass. You're an honorary curious ass.
Amazing.
Chris, I'll tell you
Facilitating for 20 years here.
Yes. You know what? And it probably took you, how long did it take you to figure out those two words?
You know what? I educated myself pretty quickly in there. Yeah.
But
it was a couple of years, to train myself to ask those. Never ask why.
Never ask why. Most people don't know why. We'll leave that one for like a mystery.
Sure.
If you're asking why, you're going to get punched in the face probably at some point. So you might want to avoid those. But yeah, you're right. Curious ask is, and that's what I teach, what and how questions, because here's what they do. The science behind this is when you ask people what and how questions, you're basically asking a form of an opinion question. And here's the thing about opinions. Opinions are like rear ends. Everybody's got one. So they're willing to share a response if you repeatedly ask them. So ask them for their opinion, they'll respond eventually. But you got to keep doing it. Here's the problem. Most people don't do it. It's the number one habit of great facilitators. Obviously, Chris figured it out. Stephanie figured it out. So the rest of you, if you're looking for more engagement, build the habit of asking what and how questions and stop asking closed-ended questions.
Go from sage on the stage to guide on the side.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Now,
be curious.
I cannot believe how fast the time has gone. Now, I know people are going to want to learn more. So before we get to, I know you mentioned some stuff already, but before we get to those rapid fire questions, is there like one place, like we'll share your website, that people can go to learn more about all of the products and services that you provide?
Yeah, you know what I'll tell you, and my website is just sardeklove.com, and that's being revised right now. So that's kind of the hub. But where I would say for all of you as training professionals, if you want if you want tips like this on a regular basis every week, sign up and register for my Ask a Master Facilitator weekly video blog series. And that's where I take questions from you all. You all can submit questions. We take a question and I record an answer to that question every Monday. It comes out. So askamasterfacilitator.com.
That's great.
Go and get it. And you'll be able to get tips from me until you get tired of getting tips from me.
I love it because we have just scratched the surface. But we're not done yet. We still have 3 more questions for you.
This is like scratch and sniff. Now it's about to smell good. Here we go.
It really is.
Okay, so at the end of try not to laugh too hard. At the end of every episode, we ask 3 rapid fire questions that require just a simple answer, but they may not be as simple questions. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay,
bring them on.
What is one book, obviously other than yours, that everyone must read and why?
Okay, so I was going to give you presentation essentials for
Well,
sure.
that's
For sure,
an
that's an
obvious
easy
one.
one.
And you
right?
should.
Okay,
I
but-
think you should.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that's an easy one, but it's a great book. Now, my all-time favorite book for training professionals and those of us who are in this industry, not just training professionals, performance consultants, blah, 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 James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Yes.
Ooh.
I'm telling you right now, that book, if you've read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Yep.
which is one of the all-time bestsellers,
Yeah.
I think James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, is the equivalent of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People of our generation. That book is going to last for a very long time because it teaches you about habits, and habits are the foundation of performance. So if you have not read Atomic Habits, I highly encourage you to read that. It will transform the way you look at training.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you slipped 3 in there.
I did,
There-
didn't I?
It's a
I do everything in threes.
I'm just messing with you.
I love a couple of bonuses. I'll take 'em every
Exactly.
time.
Okay, what is one or more tools that everyone, or not everyone, but and this could be however you define them. But what is a tool, or a couple of tools, maybe 3, that you can't live without?
Now you're putting pressure on me because I only have one.
It's like
And the one is, I'm going to tell you the one that I cannot live without, and I'm guessing a lot of training professionals in this world cannot live without, is Canva.com.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Canva, if you're not familiar with Canva, you should go out there and take a look at it. But they are continuously evolving and upgrading this platform. Over time, they've just made it so much better, and the price has not changed. I tell you what, I can't live without Canva.
Oh, that's a great tool.
That's a great choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the best piece of advice you have ever been given?
Wow. Now I had to think about this for a second. And so I'm going to go all the way back. I'm going to give credit to Dave Payne. Dave Payne is retired now, but when I was working with Chevron, he was at the time the vice president of drilling and completions, which is the unit inside of an organization like Chevron that goes out and they send the engineers to do the drilling, whether it's offshore or onshore. But he eventually became the vice president of all of their health, safety, and environment. So he went at the top of the corporation before he retired. And Dave, when I would do leadership training for them around the world, and I think I did training in like 15 countries for Chevron out of the 32 that I've been in and worked in. And Dave, he would open those leadership courses, and I'll never forget, he would say a quote. Now, he cited Lyell's Law of Certitude, but I looked it up and I couldn't find it, so I don't know if it was actually Lyell's Law of Certitude, but that's what I remember him saying. But this is what he said. He said, the moment at which you think you're right is the moment at which you must consider that you might be wrong. And when you think about it from working in an unsafe environment or working around situations where things can become unsafe, it was very poignant. And so that's where I actually learned a lot about training and the impact of training when lives are on the line, people could get killed or get hurt. So he was really serious about that. And he said, I want you to all to be, the moment you think you're right, you must consider that you might be wrong. And I took that, and that transformed my life, because I for those of you in the disc world, I'm a high D and a high I. So if you know disc, I think I'm right quite a bit. and I'm right when I'm not even right. But so I had to reconsider that I might be wrong. And in those rare occasions when I am wrong, it does happen, that helped me to understand that.
Yeah.
So that's the best piece of advice I ever got from Dave Payne. Thank you.
I think that's great advice for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that reminder that you should never get too comfortable. There's always something to learn. There's always something to question. You want to make sure that you are kind of on your toes at all times. I mean, that is terrific advice. I gotta say,
I just like to say I like to call myself the humble egomaniac.
I might borrow that. I really like that. I got to say, I was really looking forward to this conversation. Yes. Sardek, this did not disappoint in any way. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing. I can't believe how much information, how many ideas and, second favorite, F word, things that you provided to us. I mean, this is phenomenal. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's my honor. And, coming back to my home chapter, it's a pleasure. And I'm also looking forward to the keynote at the end of the year for you all. So there's just a little plug for that. If you're all around for members, if you're around for that end of the year conference that the chapter is going to have, come on and hang out with me. I'll be there. And it's like coming back home. So thank you all for the invitation. It's an honor to be part of this.
We can't wait. And of course, a huge thank you to all of you in our community for listening and watching today. And before you go, we have a message from our producer, Halyna Hodges.
Are you interested in learning more about the Metro DC chapter of ATD or following us on social media? Go to dcatd.org and click on About.
Follow the Metro DC chapter of ATD on LinkedIn today.